Hi, my name's Mark, one of the pastors at Trillium. The number one event traditionally at the Summer Olympics is the 100-meter dash. But when you think about it, it's over so fast. It can be done in a blink of an eye. It's amazing that something that quick can become the pivotal moment of the Olympics. It's sort of the premier event. I think the marathon might be a better choice. They both in the men's and women's, they run so fast, and yet it still takes a couple hours at least to run the marathon. So you get a chance to watch it. You get a chance to sort of sit back and experience it. I can't imagine running a marathon. I know people do. Maybe someone here's watching today that runs the marathon or has. Can't imagine running it. Certainly can't imagine running it in 2 hours or so. We have a creed in the United Church. Most churches have creeds, summary statements of belief or practice. We have one called the New Creed. It's not that new anymore, actually, but it goes like this. This is how it starts. We are not alone. We live in God's world. And it ends this way. In life and death and life beyond death, God is with us. We are not alone. And I'm thinking the gap between the very beginning, this is God's world, in the beginning, at the very end, we're not alone. God is with us. That gap is actually a marathon. It's a multi-generational marathon. It extends way beyond any single lifetime. And it's a plan that God has given to us, a plan that belongs to humanity generally about building a life of love. That's what the plan, I think, has been given to us. The plan that Jesus has given to us in the church, those of us who follow him, is to build this world of love. I call it the spiritual cathedral of love. Last week we talked about Notre Dame Cathedral, the cathedral in Paris, France. It took 100 years for that cathedral to be built, a multi-generational plan. But the one that we've been given in Christ is at least 100 generations long. Extends over thousands of years. In fact, it actually extends before Christ was born. Those original pioneers of faith like Abraham and Moses and David gave their lives, focused their lives on this plan of God to build this cathedral of love, in a sense, a temple of love. They never got to see even the foundation stone laid, yet they committed their lives to it. And then finally, in Jesus, the cornerstone of this new cathedral, this new way of life, this new orientation and how we're to live with one another in love gets laid. You see, Jesus understands his own death as the laying of the cornerstone. And through his resurrection and his commitment to come and live within us, he now gives us the power to join with him in being craftsmen and craftswomen who gather to build the cathedral of love, the spiritual cathedral of love. Not a physical place, but a relationship with one another, a relationship with our Creator, an orientation to life, to see life as a practice of love and compassion, forgiveness, mercy. And so we get a chance to build this cathedral, and it's pretty obvious that what Jesus started is not finished. You just have to look around to see that it's not finished. But it was never meant to be built in one lifetime. It's a multi-generational project that's now been paid forward to us. And I'm thinking back, all those generations that came before Trillium Church, Trillium United Church, all those churches and faith communities that lived before us, I figure 100 generations, if one of those churches or those communities had faltered, that they'd turned away from the calling, if they'd dropped the ball or the baton in a sense, Trillium United Church wouldn't be here. Many churches wouldn't be here. Our faith and our community rests on the practice of faith that lived long before we ever could even imagine ourselves. In fact, it goes back to the early church, the very first church, those first churches who gathered to lift up Jesus and his way of life in the world, and who allowed his Spirit to come and live within them, and who became the first craftsmen and craftswomen who began to build this spiritual cathedral of love, this other way of life. And they couldn't imagine what their legacy would be. I don't think they could imagine that 2,000 years later, in a place they couldn't even have imagined existing, their faith and their commitment has shaped the world that we at Trillium live in today. And who's to say that Trillium or any church today could also shape the world of the future by the choices we make in the moment? Maybe there's going to be a church someday down the road, 2,000 years out into the future, who will look back and be able to trace their lineage to us here at Trillium. There's no way of knowing for sure. The only thing that we do know is that God calls us in the moment to act with the confidence that what we're doing will make a difference in the end. And so we gather at Trillium, and we gather with other Christians and other church communities to build the spiritual cathedral of love, knowing that as we live out God's way of life in this world, we not only shape the present, but we also shape the future.